Ladies and gentlemen, there is one question that separates the extraordinary from the ordinary. How big do you dare to dream? Dreams are not mere fantasies that float through our minds at night. They are the blueprints of our future, the silent voice inside us that whispers, "You are capable of more." Every great invention, every historic achievement, every empire built from nothing, all of it began as a dream in someone's mind. Think of the Wright brothers, who dreamed of flying when the world said it was impossible. Think of Nelson Mandela, who dreamed of freedom from behind prison walls. Think of every ordinary person who refused to accept an ordinary life. The world does not belong to the most talented, the most privileged, or the most educated. The world belongs to those who dream without limits and pursue those dreams without apology. Today, I stand before you not just to inspire you, but to remind you of something you may have forgotten. Your dream is valid, your dream is powerful, and your dream is worth every sacrifice it demands. So I ask you, are you ready to stop thinking small? Are you ready to dream big? Your dream is your destiny. This is not a poetic phrase written to decorate a wall or fill a motivational poster. This is a truth so deep, so fundamental, that once you truly understand it, it will change the way you see yourself and the life you are living. Every single person who has ever walked this earth has felt it, that quiet pull towards something greater, that restless feeling that there is more to life than what currently surrounds them. That feeling is not an accident. That feeling is a message. Think about the moment you first had a dream, not just a wish, not just a passing thought, but a real, burning desire for something. Maybe it was a career you longed for, a life you imagined, a person you wanted to become. Do you remember how alive it made you feel? Do you remember how your heart beat a little faster, how your mind raced with possibilities, how for just a moment, everything seemed possible? That feeling was not coincidence. That was your destiny knocking on the door of your consciousness, asking to be let in. Throughout history, the greatest men and women were not always the most educated, the most privileged, or the most connected. What separated them from the rest of the world was simply this: they believed their dream was meant for them. Abraham Lincoln dreamed of a united, free nation while the world around him burned in conflict. Marie Curie dreamed of scientific discovery in an era that told women to stay silent. They did not stumble into greatness. They were guided there by a dream they refused to abandon. There is a reason your dream feels personal, feels urgent, feels like it belongs to no one else but you. Because it does. The dream inside you was not placed there randomly. It was crafted specifically for your hands, your mind, your story, your struggles. No one else on this planet carries your exact combination of experiences, pain, passion, and potential. That means the dream you carry is one that only you can bring to life. If you do not pursue it, the world loses something it can never recover. The gap your unlived dream leaves behind is permanent. But here is where so many people lose their way. They confuse their dream with someone else's path. They look at how others achieve greatness and assume they must follow the same road. They compare their chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 20 and feel behind, feel inadequate, feel like perhaps the dream was never truly meant for them. This is the first and most dangerous lie the mind tells. Your destiny does not arrive on someone else's timeline. It arrives exactly when you are ready. And your job is simply to keep moving toward it. So the question is no longer whether your dream is real, or whether you deserve it, or whether it is too late. Those questions are distractions. The only question worth asking is this: what are you willing to do today, with what you have, from where you are, to move one step closer to the life that was always meant to be yours? Because the moment you stop waiting for permission and start walking with purpose, something extraordinary begins to shift, not just in your circumstances, but deep within you. And that shift, that moment of decision, is where everything truly begins. Fear is the enemy of greatness. Not failure, not competition, not lack of resources, fear. That invisible force that sits quietly in the corner of your mind, disguised as logic, disguised as practicality, disguised as wisdom. It speaks to you in a calm and reasonable voice, telling you to wait, telling you to be realistic, telling you that the timing is not right, that you are not ready, that the world is not ready for you. And the most dangerous thing about fear is not how loud it screams, it is how convincingly it whispers. Every single person who has ever dared to dream big has had to stand face to face with fear. Every entrepreneur who built an empire from nothing, every artist who bared their soul to the world, every leader who stood against the tide of public opinion, they were all afraid. The difference between them and the millions who stayed small is not that they felt no fear. The difference is that they moved anyway. They chose their vision over their comfort. They chose the discomfort of growth over the false safety of staying still. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision that something else matters more. Think about the dreams you have quietly buried over the years. Think about the opportunities you watched pass by because something inside you said it was too risky, too ambitious, too uncertain. Think about the version of yourself you imagined becoming, and then ask honestly, was it truly impossibility that stopped you, or was it fear wearing the mask of impossibility? Most of the limits we live within are not real boundaries. They are fears we have rehearsed so many times that they began to feel like facts. And once a fear feels like a fact, it becomes a prison with no visible walls. Society plays its own cruel role in feeding this fear. From a very early age, we are taught to color within the lines, to follow the established path, to measure success by what is safe and socially acceptable. The child who dreams of becoming an astronaut is gently redirected towards something more practical. The young woman who wants to lead nations is subtly reminded of her limitations. The boy from the broken neighborhood who dares to imagine wealth and influence is laughed back into his corner. And slowly, piece by piece, the world chips away at the dreamer until all that remains is someone who has learned to dream within the boundaries of other people's comfort. But here is what fear never tells you. On the other side of it lies everything you have ever wanted. Every great achievement in human history sits just beyond the edge of someone's fear. The breakthrough was always one more step past the point where most people turn back. The invention was always one more experiment after the last failure. The victory was always one more attempt after the world said it was over. Fear guards the entrance to greatness, not because you do not belong there, but because only those willing to push through deserve what waits on the other side. And so you must learn to see fear differently. Not as a stop sign, but as a signal. A signal that you are standing at the edge of something meaningful, something significant, something that has the power to change your life and the lives of those around you. The presence of fear is not proof that you are going the wrong way. It is often the greatest confirmation that you are going exactly the right way. So the next time fear rises in your chest and tells you to stop, pause for just a moment, look it in the eye, and ask yourself, what would my life look like if I walked through this anyway? Because the answer to that question leads somewhere remarkable, somewhere that requires not just courage, but something even more powerful, consistency. That quiet, unglamorous, deeply underrated force that turns ordinary people into extraordinary ones. We live in a world that celebrates the moment of arrival, the launch, the breakthrough, the overnight success, but rarely stops to honor the thousands of small, unseen steps that made that moment possible. We see the champion standing on the podium, but we do not see the 4 o'clock mornings, the missed celebrations, the aching muscles, the moments of doubt that were silently pushed aside in favor of one more hour of practice. We see the destination and forget entirely about the journey that built it. Small steps are not a compromise. They are not what you do when you lack the ability to take giant leaps. Small steps are the architecture of every great life ever lived. A single brick placed carefully each day builds a cathedral over time. A single page written with discipline each morning becomes a published book within a year. A single conversation, a single decision, a single act of courage repeated consistently over months and years accumulates into something so powerful, so significant, that even the person who built it sometimes struggles to believe it was their own hands that created it. Greatness is not a single event. Greatness is a habit. The tragedy of our generation is not a lack of talent or a lack of opportunity. It is a lack of patience. We want the result without the process. We want the harvest without the planting. We want the transformation without the discomfort of change. And so we start with enormous energy, fueled by inspiration and excitement, and then somewhere in the middle, in that long, invisible stretch between beginning and arrival, we slow down, we lose momentum, we convince ourselves that progress is not happening because it cannot yet be seen. But progress that cannot be seen is still progress. The seed underground does not look like a tree. That does not mean it is not growing. There is a principle that the most successful people in the world understand deeply and live by daily, the principle of compounding. What compounds financially also compounds personally. Every skill you practice compounds. Every book you read compounds. Every healthy choice you make compounds. Every moment you choose discipline over distraction, purpose over pleasure, long-term vision over short-term comfort. It all compounds silently, invisibly, until one day the world looks at you and calls it talent, calls it luck, calls it a gift. But you will know the truth. You will know it was simply the result of small steps taken consistently, when no one was watching, and no one was applauding. This is why comparison is so destructive to the dreamer. When you measure your small, daily steps against someone else's visible results, you are comparing two entirely different points on two entirely different journeys. You are seeing their harvest and forgetting your seeds have only just been planted. Every person you admire was once exactly where you are, unknown, uncertain, quietly building something the world had not yet noticed. The only thing that separated their future from their present was their refusal to stop. Not their talent, not their connections, not their circumstances. Simply their refusal to quit on the days when quitting felt completely reasonable. So wherever you are today, whether you are at the very beginning, exhausted in the middle, or frustrated that the finish line still feels far away, know this: every step you take matters more than you can currently measure. The morning you wake up and choose to try again when everything in you wants to rest, the evening you sit down to work when no one would blame you for giving up, the moment you decide to keep going simply because you made a promise to yourself, these are not small moments. These are the moments that define a life. And it is in these moments, in this quiet and relentless forward motion, that the true character of a dreamer is forged. Because building a dream is not just about reaching a destination, it is about who you become on the way there. And who you become will inevitably face something that every dreamer, without exception, must learn to make peace with: failure. That word alone is enough to make the bravest hearts hesitate, enough to silence the most passionate voices, enough to stop the most determined dreamers in their tracks. We have been conditioned from childhood to see failure as the opposite of success, as evidence that we are not good enough, not smart enough, not deserving enough. We carry our failures like shame, hiding them from the world, pretending they never happened, building walls around ourselves so that no one can see the places where we fell. But what if everything we were taught about failure was wrong? What if failure is not the opposite of success, but the very road that leads directly to it? Every person who has ever achieved something worth achieving has a failure story that would shock you. Thomas Edison failed over 1,000 times before the light bulb finally came to life. And when asked about his failures, he looked the world in the eye and said he had not failed once. He had simply discovered 1,000 ways that did not work. Michael Jordan was cut from his high school basketball team, the very sport that would one day make him immortal. J.K. Rowling was a single mother on welfare, her manuscript rejected by 12 publishers before one finally said yes to the story that would become Harry Potter. These were not people who avoided failure. These were people who walked straight through it, again and again, refusing to let it have the final word on their story. Failure teaches what success never can. Success confirms what you already know. Failure reveals what you still need to learn. It exposes the weaknesses you were too comfortable to notice, the assumptions you were too confident to question, the strategies that needed to be rebuilt from the ground up. Every failure carries inside it a lesson so precise, so perfectly tailored to your specific journey, that no classroom, no mentor, no book could have delivered it with the same impact. The entrepreneur whose first business collapses does not just lose money. They gain wisdom that will make their second venture unbreakable. The athlete who loses the championship does not just experience defeat. They discover exactly what they need to sharpen to become unstoppable. Failure is not a punishment. It is a master class. The most important shift a dreamer can make is to stop measuring their worth by their results and start measuring it by their response. Anyone can stay standing when life is easy. Anyone can keep believing when everything is going according to plan. But the true test of a dreamer is what they do in the moment, when the plan falls apart, when the ground beneath them gives way, when the voice in their head says it is finally time to accept defeat. It is in that exact moment, that raw, humbling, painful moment, that the greatest dreamers make a different choice. They do not celebrate the fall, but they refuse to stay on the ground. They get up, not because they are fearless, not because they are certain of the outcome, but because deep inside them something burns brighter than the pain of failure. And that burning thing, that unshakable inner force that refuses to be extinguished no matter how many times life knocks you down, that is something the world desperately needs to witness, desperately needs to feel, desperately needs to be reminded of. You are never just dreaming for yourself. From the moment that vision was placed inside you, it carried a weight far greater than your own personal ambition, far greater than your own comfort or success or recognition. Every dream that is pursued with courage, with consistency, with the willingness to fail and rise again, sends a ripple through the world that touches lives the dreamer may never even meet. The mother who builds her business from nothing does not just change her own life. She shows her daughter that limits are a choice. The young man who rises from poverty to purpose does not just escape his circumstances. He becomes the living proof that his entire community needed to believe that escape was possible. History has never been changed by crowds. It has always been changed by individuals, single human beings who dared to carry a dream long enough, far enough, and faithfully enough for the world to finally feel its impact. Nelson Mandela did not just dream of his own freedom. He dreamed of a nation's dignity, and held that dream through 27 years of imprisonment. Malala Yousafzai did not just dream of her own education. She dreamed of every silenced girl on earth and spoke when speaking itself was dangerous. These were ordinary people with extraordinary commitment to a dream bigger than themselves. And because they refused to let their dream die, the world today stands differently than it would have without them. So here you stand, at the end of this story, and the beginning of yours. You have heard about dreams and destiny, about fear and courage, about small steps and long roads, about failure and the fire that survives it. Now only one thing remains: your decision. The world is waiting, not for someone perfect, but for someone willing. Your dream is the answer to a question the world is still asking. Go out and answer it.